What if I told you that one private habit could be quietly draining your motivation, your focus, your confidence, your emotional stability, and even your sense of identity without anyone around you noticing, and sometimes without you fully understanding it yourself? This is not about shame, and it is not about judgment. This is about awareness, because across the world, millions of people are living a silent routine that looks normal on the outside, but feels like an invisible struggle on the inside. A routine that often happens late at night, behind closed doors, with a glowing screen and a promise that it will be the last time. At first, the habit feels harmless and even comforting, something small that helps relieve stress, boredom, loneliness, or curiosity. But over time, that small escape begins to reshape daily life in subtle ways that are difficult to detect, yet impossible to ignore once awareness arrives. Most habits that eventually control us never start as destructive. They start as convenient, interesting, or emotionally soothing. And pornography often enters life during moments of vulnerability, such as loneliness, adolescence, curiosity, heartbreak, or stress, presenting itself as easy pleasure that requires no effort and no risk of rejection. What makes it powerful is not intensity, but accessibility. The fact that it is always available, always novel, always stimulating. And because of that, it begins to occupy more space in the brain than intended. Slowly, what was once occasional becomes frequent. What was once optional becomes automatic. And what was once curiosity becomes dependency, without a clear moment where the shift happened. The human brain is designed to pursue pleasure and avoid pain, and dopamine plays a central role in motivation, reward, and anticipation. But artificial stimulation delivered in endless novelty overwhelms this natural system. Each exposure reinforces neural pathways that associate instant gratification with relief, teaching the brain that comfort can be achieved without effort, patience, or emotional engagement. Over time, this creates a contrast effect where ordinary activities such as studying, exercising, socializing, or working toward long-term goals feel less stimulating compared to the intense novelty of digital content. This doesn't mean life becomes meaningless, but it can begin to feel muted, like living behind a thin emotional fog, where excitement is harder to access and motivation feels inconsistent. Many people notice this shift not through dramatic consequences, but through subtle loss of drive. Procrastination increases, focus weakens, tasks feel heavier, and long-term goals seem distant, even when they once felt exciting. This can create confusion, because outwardly life appears stable, yet internally there is a persistent sense of underperformance, a quiet awareness that more potential exists than what is being expressed. The habit doesn't erase ambition, but it competes with it, redirecting energy toward immediate gratification instead of delayed growth. And over time, that energy imbalance can create frustration and self-doubt. Beyond neurological effects, there are emotional layers that often remain unspoken. Feelings of guilt after indulgence, moments of shame, questions about self-control, and a growing discomfort with the gap between intentions and actions. These emotions may not dominate every day, but they accumulate gradually, influencing self-perception and confidence. The internal dialogue becomes more critical, asking why stopping feels difficult and why promises to oneself are harder to keep. And this erosion of self-trust can be more damaging than the habit itself, because self-trust is foundational to identity and growth. Another subtle consequence is isolation. Not necessarily physical isolation, but emotional distance, where real connection requires vulnerability, patience, and presence, while digital escape offers control, predictability, and immediate gratification. This contrast can make the screen feel safer than authentic interaction, leading to avoidance of discomfort that is necessary for meaningful relationships. Over time, loneliness can increase even when social life exists, because emotional intimacy is replaced with passive consumption rather than mutual connection. Transformation often begins with a quiet realization rather than a dramatic crisis, a moment where someone reflects on their habits, energy, focus, or emotional state, and asks whether this routine is serving or limiting them. This awareness can be uncomfortable, because it challenges denial and requires honesty. Yet it is also empowering, because it introduces choice where autopilot once existed. The question shifts from whether the habit is morally right or wrong, to whether it aligns with the life one truly wants to build. Once awareness appears, a quiet internal conflict begins to form between two versions of the self: the part that seeks comfort, familiarity, and immediate relief, and the part that longs for growth, clarity, discipline, and authenticity. This conflict can feel exhausting because both voices sound convincing in different moments, especially during stress, boredom, loneliness, or fatigue. The comfort voice whispers that the habit is harmless and temporary, while the growth voice reminds you of your goals, your potential, and the subtle dissatisfaction you feel afterward. Living between these two voices creates tension that often leads to cycles of intention and relapse, promise and frustration, hope and discouragement. Habits rarely exist in isolation. They are linked to emotional states, environments, and routines that act as triggers, and pornography consumption often correlates with boredom, loneliness, anxiety, procrastination, or emotional avoidance. Recognizing these triggers is essential because the behavior is frequently a coping mechanism rather than the core issue itself. When someone feels overwhelmed or disconnected, the brain seeks relief, and familiar patterns offer quick comfort, even if temporary. Understanding triggers transforms the narrative from self-blame to self-awareness, allowing space for change rooted in compassion rather than harsh judgment. Choosing to reduce or eliminate the habit introduces a challenging phase where urges feel stronger, thoughts become intrusive, and emotional discomfort surfaces more clearly. This phase can be misinterpreted as failure or proof of dependency, but in reality, it often represents the nervous system recalibrating and the brain adjusting to reduced artificial stimulation. During this time, individuals may experience restlessness, irritability, mood swings, or heightened cravings, yet these sensations are temporary and reflect adaptation rather than damage. The discomfort of withdrawal is not punishment, but evidence that change is occurring beneath the surface. One of the most meaningful outcomes of resisting urges is the gradual rebuilding of self-trust, the quiet confidence that actions can align with intentions even in difficult moments. Self-trust grows through consistency rather than perfection, through small daily decisions that reinforce identity. Each moment of resistance, no matter how minor it seems, becomes proof that change is possible, and over time, these proofs accumulate into belief. When self-trust strengthens, motivation becomes less dependent on emotion and more grounded in identity, shifting from trying to quit to becoming someone who chooses differently. As time passes without excessive stimulation, many individuals report subtle yet profound shifts in mental clarity, improved focus, increased emotional sensitivity, and a renewed appreciation for simple experiences. This clarity does not arrive suddenly, but emerges gradually, like fog lifting from a landscape, revealing details that were always present but previously muted. Activities such as reading, exercising, creating, or engaging in conversation begin to feel more satisfying, not because they changed, but because attention and emotional presence have deepened. This renewed clarity can inspire motivation and reinforce commitment to change. Another transformation involves emotional reconnection, where individuals experience feelings more vividly: joy, sadness, excitement, and empathy. While emotional numbness can act as protection against discomfort, it also limits depth of experience, and reducing reliance on artificial stimulation allows emotional range to expand again. This can initially feel overwhelming because suppressed emotions surface, yet it also enables authentic connection with oneself and others. Emotional reconnection fosters empathy, vulnerability, and meaningful relationships, qualities essential for long-term fulfillment. Confidence gained through this journey often differs from surface-level bravado. It is quieter, steadier, rooted in integrity rather than external validation. When someone demonstrates discipline privately, it influences how they carry themselves publicly, strengthening eye contact, communication, posture, and overall presence. This confidence arises not from perfection, but from alignment between values and behavior, creating a sense of authenticity that others can perceive even without knowing the underlying journey. Presence replaces distraction, allowing individuals to engage more fully with conversations, experiences, and opportunities. Energy previously invested in escape becomes available for growth, creativity, and ambition, leading many individuals to explore new interests, physical fitness, learning, entrepreneurship, or personal development. This redirection of energy highlights an important realization that habits do not simply disappear, but are replaced with alternatives that satisfy underlying needs, such as connection, excitement, or stress relief. Constructive outlets provide sustainable fulfillment and reduce reliance on short-term coping mechanisms, reinforcing the sense of progress and purpose. Despite progress, setbacks may occur, and relapse can evoke disappointment or self-criticism. Yet reframing relapse as feedback rather than failure allows growth to continue. Each setback reveals information about triggers, emotional states, and coping gaps, offering opportunities to adjust strategies and strengthen resilience. Growth is rarely linear, and expecting perfection can undermine motivation, while embracing learning fosters persistence. The difference between temporary setback and long-term stagnation often lies in interpretation, whether the experience is viewed as evidence of incapacity or as part of the learning process. Over time, consistent effort leads to an identity shift where individuals no longer see themselves as trapped or struggling, but as evolving and capable of intentional living. Identity change is powerful because behavior tends to align with self-perception, and when someone identifies as disciplined, mindful, or growth-oriented, decisions naturally reflect those qualities. This shift reduces internal conflict and strengthens motivation, because actions become expressions of identity rather than forced obligations. The journey transitions from quitting something negative to building something meaningful. One of the most transformative outcomes of this process is the rebuilding of self-trust, the quiet assurance that one can rely on their own decisions even when challenges arise. Self-trust develops gradually through repeated alignment between intention and behavior, strengthening confidence and resilience. This trust influences multiple areas of life, including relationships, career ambitions, health habits, and emotional well-being, because believing in one's capacity for change creates momentum that extends beyond a single habit. With self-trust comes courage to pursue goals, confront fears, and embrace growth opportunities that once felt intimidating. As clarity, confidence, and emotional presence deepen, life begins to expand in ways that may have once seemed distant or unattainable. Opportunities feel more accessible, creativity flows more freely, and relationships gain depth through genuine connection. This expansion is not the result of external transformation alone, but of internal alignment, where energy once fragmented becomes focused and purposeful. The journey reveals that the removal of one limiting habit can create space for countless positive experiences, reinforcing the interconnected nature of mental, emotional, and behavioral health. With awareness comes responsibility, not in the sense of blame, but in the recognition that each moment presents an opportunity to choose. And while past habits may shape present tendencies, they do not determine future identity. Choice exists in small actions, such as redirecting attention, seeking connection, engaging in meaningful activities, or simply pausing before acting on impulse. These small choices accumulate over time, shaping patterns, identity, and ultimately life trajectory. Responsibility becomes empowering rather than burdensome when viewed as the capacity to influence one's own direction. Sustainable transformation rarely occurs through dramatic gestures, but through consistent small steps, daily decisions that may appear insignificant individually, yet create profound change collectively. Each moment of awareness, each redirected urge, each constructive activity reinforces neural pathways associated with discipline and presence. Progress measured in small steps reduces overwhelm and fosters resilience, reminding individuals that growth is a process rather than a single event. Celebrating incremental improvement strengthens motivation and reinforces commitment to long-term well-being. The screen once offered an escape from discomfort, but real life is where growth, connection, and personal power truly exist. If this message resonated with you, take one honest step forward today. Not a perfect step, but a sincere one. Because transformation does not begin when urges disappear, but when you decide that your time, your energy, and your future are worth more than temporary escape. And every intentional choice you make from this moment onward becomes a quiet declaration that your life is guided, not by habit, but by awareness, purpose, and the courage to grow.